Evolution takes millions of years, but removing yourself from the gene pool takes about 2 seconds. Today we're counting down those exact 2-second Darwin Awards. From a burglar who locked himself in a walk-in freezer over a birthday cake to a basketball mascot whose ultimate dunk ended in the most insane way possible. It was October 21st, 2022, on the empty highways of Patagonia, Argentina, that morning. It felt like the perfect place to try something crazy. Zdravko Milosevic was 27 years old. He loved speed more than anything, whether it came from fast cars or anything else that could push his limits. Although he worked as a grocery store attendant, he spent nearly all his free time modifying old cars. He swapped engines, increased horsepower, upgraded suspensions, and installed racing parts whenever he could afford them. He didn't make much money, but he poured almost everything he earned into his projects because he hated being outdone by anyone with a faster car. Around town, he was known as the man who never backed down from a challenge and always had something to prove behind the wheel. Zdravko often joined illegal night races. Winning meant everything to him. One night, he lost control during a race and slammed into a stack of old tires. He walked away with only small cuts and said the crash gave him the biggest rush he had ever felt. From that day, he started taking even bigger risks. His friends begged him to slow down, but he laughed and called them scared. He believed nothing bad could happen to him because he had survived before. I've noticed that surviving something dangerous makes people feel invincible instead of grateful, and that's when the real risk starts. Then Zdravko decided his next goal was to break 200 miles per hour. Instead of using safe racing conditions, he installed a larger turbocharger, added a nitrous oxide system, disabled the car's speed limiter, and kept tuning the engine for more power. He spent days working on the Mustang, checking every bolt. He felt proud of what he had built and believed he had created the fastest car he had ever owned. Early one morning, he drove to a long, empty highway in Patagonia. Traffic was very light that morning, and Zdravko believed he had found a long stretch of road where he could attempt the run without interruption. He climbed into the driver's seat and pushed the pedal all the way to the floor. The Mustang tore forward past 160 miles per hour, then 180. As it approached 200 miles per hour, the rear of the Mustang suddenly became unstable. Investigators later found evidence that one of the rear tires had failed, contributing to Zdravko losing control. The car fishtailed hard, left the roadway, flipped multiple times across the rocky area, and crashed into a cliff. The severe impact caused extensive damage to the vehicle, and a fire broke out shortly afterward. You can build a perfect machine and still not account for physics, metal fatigue, or the 1,000 things that break at extreme speeds. The crash was violent. Zdravko suffered catastrophic injuries in the impact. He died at the scene before anyone could help him. Motorists who came upon the wreck called emergency services. Firefighters extinguished the vehicle fire while paramedics confirmed that Zdravko had died from the injuries he sustained in the crash. When emergency crews arrived, they found pieces of the car scattered over a wide area. There was almost nothing left that looked like a car. Investigators determined that excessive speed was the primary factor in the crash. They also found that the vehicle's extensive modifications and evidence of a rear tire failure likely contributed to Zdravko losing control. The medical examiner later ruled his death the result of multiple traumatic injuries sustained in the high-speed crash. Because of the extensive fire and damage, the Mustang was declared a total loss and removed from the scene for further examination before being scrapped. Zdravko spent years building a car to go faster and faster, but he never built a reason to stop. The next person I'm about to tell you about also made a choice thinking it was temporary, but temporary turned into permanent very quickly. It was on March 16th, 2017, in Alberta, Canada. The night was cold and quiet, but one action turned it all around. Thaddeus Quilby was 31 years old. He never knew his real family. He grew up bouncing between foster homes with nobody to guide him or tell him right from wrong. As a young boy, he learned how to steal food just to eat. Later, he became a small-time thief because it was the only way he knew how to survive. As he got older, he met a group of burglars who promised him easy money. They showed him how to break into homes and shops at night. Thaddeus believed he had finally found people who cared about him. On their second burglary, they ran off and left him behind when a silent alarm went off. He was arrested and spent years in prison while the others disappeared. When he was released, he did not change his life. He blamed everyone except himself. This time he worked alone because he trusted nobody. The people in his apartment building thought he was quiet and polite. They had no idea he secretly broke into buildings at night. His birthday was coming the next day, and he wanted to throw a small party for a few people he knew. He had almost no money, so he decided he would steal whatever he needed instead of buying it. People who were never shown how to live as if tomorrow matters always believe today can be fixed by some quick solution. And I know that's the wrong way. Late that night, he broke into a small grocery store after closing. He searched the register and took the small amount of cash left behind, along with a few cartons of cigarettes. Then he walked toward the back and noticed a decorated birthday cake sitting inside a walk-in cooler, ordered early for a customer's party the next day. He thought it would be perfect for his own celebration. Just then, he heard a truck pull up outside, followed by voices near the loading door. He believed the police had arrived. Instead of slipping out the front, he stepped into the cooler to hide and pulled the heavy door shut behind him. When he was sure no one was coming, he tried to leave. The moment it closed, he reached for the handle. It would not move. He tried the inside release, but it had been broken for months and was never repaired. He pulled harder and harder, but the door stayed shut. He kicked the metal door, pounded on it with both fists until his knuckles split open, and shouted until his voice gave out. Nobody heard him because the store was empty for the night. The thing about hiding places is that they always look different from the inside than they did when you chose them. Over the next several hours, the cold caused severe hypothermia. His hands and feet went numb, his thinking grew foggy, and he struggled to stay awake. He curled up in the corner, hoping someone would open the door before morning. Eventually, he lost consciousness and died from hypothermia inside the locked cooler. The store stayed empty until the first employee arrived early the next morning to start the shift. She opened the cooler and found Thaddeus curled up on the floor, still and motionless. Shocked, she called the police. Police checked the security cameras. The footage showed Thaddeus breaking in, taking the cash, finding the cake, walking into the cooler alone, and shutting the door without anyone forcing him. Safety inspectors confirmed the inside release had failed from years of neglect. Investigators found no sign anyone else was involved. His death was ruled an accident caused by his own terrible decision. The next person I'm going to tell you about believed he was building something that would make people love him, but he was actually building something that would destroy him. It was January 26th, 2020 in Ballarat, Victoria, Australia. It was meant to be the biggest stunt of his life, but at the same time, a bad one. Stellan Vey was 28 years old. He worked as a janitor at a restaurant, but he dreamed of becoming a full-time content creator. He believed going viral was the fastest way to change his life, and every stunt was another chance to make it happen. As he got older, he became known for doing increasingly dangerous tricks. He could flip over cars, jump from high places onto soft pads, and pull off stunts that scared everyone around him. Among his friends and followers, people jokingly called him the Stunt King because he always seemed to walk away unharmed. After years of doing the same tricks, he became bored. The old stunts no longer gave him the excitement he wanted. He started making up new ones. Some ended with broken bones, cuts, and burns, but that never stopped him. He believed pain was just part of becoming famous. Then he had another very stupid idea. He started adding fireworks to his videos because he thought bright explosions would make people watch longer. At first, nothing went wrong, and the videos spread across social media. His followers grew every week, and people kept asking what he would do next. Instead of slowing down, he felt pushed to do something even bigger. I've watched people turn their pain into performance, and they always need bigger pain to get the same applause. On Australia Day, friends and neighbors gathered for a backyard celebration. Music was playing, children were running around with sparklers, and people were cooking food while waiting for the fireworks display after dark. Stellan told everyone they were about to see his greatest stunt. He strapped a homemade launch tube to a hard hat, secured it with heavy tape and straps, and lowered a large aerial fireworks shell into the tube. The shell had been obtained illegally because powerful aerial fireworks are not sold for public use in Victoria. He held up his phone so the whole stunt would be recorded and proudly told everyone the tube would send the shell high into the sky before it exploded. His closest friend begged him to take the helmet off and throw the firework away. Stellan refused every warning. He kept saying he had tested risky ideas before and nothing bad had ever happened. He believed people only doubted him because they were afraid to take chances. When someone who loves you begs you to stop, they're not being scared, they're being wise. And if you ignore them, you're not being brave, you're being deaf to the one voice that matters. One friend eventually gave in and lit the fuse after Stellan insisted everything would be fine. For 1 second, nothing happened. Stellan stood perfectly still with a wide smile and gave a thumbs up to the camera. Instead of launching into the sky, the homemade setup failed almost instantly. The firework detonated before it could leave the launch tube, and it threw Stellan backwards onto the ground. People screamed and ran toward him, while others grabbed the frightened children and pulled them away. Smoke filled the air, and pieces of burnt cardboard landed across the yard. Someone called emergency services, while others desperately tried to help him, but his injuries were far too severe. Police and firefighters quickly secured the area because they could not be sure whether any unexploded fireworks were still dangerous. Paramedics arrived, but his injuries were catastrophic. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The celebration ended in silence. Police closed the area while investigators examined the remains of the firework and spoke with everyone who had witnessed the stunt. The friend who lit the fuse was also interviewed as part of the investigation, although the main focus remained on how the illegal homemade setup had failed. The death was later investigated by the coroner, as is standard in sudden accidental deaths in Australia. He was never satisfied. He wanted more. And that took all he had to offer. The next case is also about someone who thought he could prove something with a quick, balanced move, but he was playing with things he couldn't control. It was October 9th, 2021, and the morning was bright in Christchurch, Canterbury, New Zealand. It was a quiet Saturday, and one very silly decision at home turned an ordinary day into a tragedy. Therick Vallon was 44 years old and worked as a stock trader. He spent most of his days buying and selling shares from home, making fast decisions, and believing every problem had a quick answer. That habit followed him into everyday life. If there was a shortcut, he usually took it. Friends often joked that he rushed through everything, even the smallest jobs. Therick had been divorced for almost 3 years, and although he never spoke much about it, the breakup hurt him deeply. Many of the boxes still sitting in his garage belonged to his former wife. He had kept putting off cleaning the place because every box reminded him of the life he once had. Recently, Therick decided it was finally time to move on. He had been saving money for a new sports car and wanted enough space in the garage to park it. That Saturday was his chance. He woke up early, made himself breakfast, and started sorting through old tools, broken furniture, camping gear, and dusty boxes that had not been opened in years. Some things he threw away, others he planned to donate. By late morning, the garage already looked much cleaner. Therick always tried to act younger than his age. Most of his close friends were in their 20s and early 30s. He joined them at parties, played sports with them, and accepted every challenge they gave them. They often laughed that he did not have the balance he once had. Instead of laughing it off, Therick always tried to prove them wrong. Therick was 44 and trying to move on from a divorce, but he decided that cleaning the garage was a moment to prove he was still young, and that's where he started making mistakes. Near the back of the garage, Therick noticed one last heavy box, sitting on the highest shelf. He believed it contained old photo albums and decorations from his marriage. His stepladder was outside behind the house, but he did not want to waste time walking around to get it. Sitting only a few steps away was a rolling office chair he had stopped using months earlier. I've seen people do crazy things just to prove a point, and most times it ends the wrong way. He climbed onto the chair carefully and stood with both feet on the seat. At first, everything seemed fine. He slowly reached upward, stretching both hands toward the box. The moment his weight shifted forward, one of the chair's wheels rolled across the smooth concrete floor. The chair shot backward without warning. Therick tried to jump off, but his feet slipped. He crashed backward, and the side of his head clipped the edge of the workbench as he went down. The large box also fell from the shelf and landed across his chest. A neighbor heard the loud crash and ran over after finding the garage door open. Therick was lying motionless on the floor with blood around his head. Emergency services arrived within minutes and rushed him to the hospital. Doctors found a severe skull fracture, bleeding on the brain, multiple broken ribs, and bruising to several internal organs. Emergency surgery was performed, but the damage was too great. Therick died later that evening, surrounded by a few family members. In the days that followed, friends cleared the rest of the garage exactly as Therick had planned. Investigators found no sign of faulty equipment or foul play after reviewing CCTV footage from the property. They concluded that his death was caused by a fall. Derek climbed on a rolling chair to prove his friends wrong about his balance, and in doing so, he proved them completely right. The next person I'm going to tell you about believed watching was enough, but she learned that lesson too late. It was the evening of November 8th, 2014, in West Flanders, Belgium. A quiet dinner at home nearly became a nightmare because of one small wrong move. Ondine Fesquerel was 31 years old and worked as an assistant at a private company. She never liked her job. Every weekday felt the same. She answered emails, sorted files, attended meetings, and counted the hours until she could finally go home. The only part of the day she truly loved was cooking. The kitchen was the one place where she forgot about work and felt happy again. Ever since she was young, Ondine loved trying new things. She never wanted to judge food before tasting it herself. She enjoyed making meals from different countries and spent hours watching cooking videos online. She believed the best way to learn was by doing. Sometimes that curiosity got her into trouble. A few years earlier, she rushed to take roasted chicken from the oven and forgot she was still wearing a thin rubber cleaning glove instead of an oven glove. The heat burned her hand badly. Even after that painful lesson, she still believed mistakes were just part of learning. Learning from mistakes works when the mistake has a small enough cost. But at some point, the cost becomes death. And that's not learning anymore. To me, it's just dying. After another long day at work, she decided to cook one of the recipes she had saved online. The video showed a chef making crispy food with very hot oil. The chef looked calm and made everything seem easy. Ondine wanted her meal to look just as good. She poured cooking oil into a deep pan and turned the heat higher because she thought hotter oil would cook faster. She became distracted while looking at the recipe on her phone. By the time she looked back, the oil was smoking heavily. Within seconds, flames suddenly appeared above the pan. She jumped back in fear. It was the first time she had ever seen cooking oil catch fire. Instead of turning off the heat and covering the pan with a metal lid, she panicked. Without thinking, she grabbed a glass of water from the sink and poured it straight into the burning oil. The moment the water touched the hot oil, everything exploded. The water instantly turned into steam and threw burning oil into the air. A huge ball of fire rushed across the kitchen. Ondine screamed and stumbled backward, shielding her face with her arm as a spray of hot oil caught her forearm. Flames climbed the walls, spread onto the curtains, and reached the cupboards in only a few seconds. The heat and flames became so strong that she could not get close enough to the door without passing through the flames. She screamed for help as smoke quickly filled the house. Neighbors heard her cries and called the fire service, but the fire spread much faster than anyone expected. Firefighters arrived within minutes and fought the blaze until they finally brought it under control. When they entered the kitchen, they found Ondine badly burned and unconscious near the back door. Paramedics tried everything they could to save her, but she died from severe burns and smoke inhalation before she could recover. The investigation later confirmed that the fire started when overheated cooking oil ignited. Based on the burn patterns at the scene, investigators concluded that water had likely been thrown onto the burning oil, triggering the deadly fireball that filled the kitchen almost instantly. The apartment suffered extensive fire damage and was declared uninhabitable. The next case made a choice thinking they understood risk better than others actually did. But understanding is different from being safe. It was March 12, 2016, at the river in a national reserve in Kenya. A quiet afternoon, and one very foolish choice nearly turned a happy trip into a tragedy that thousands of people watched live. Peregrine Osk was 29 years old and loved traveling more than anything. Since childhood, he had spent countless weekends exploring mountains, beaches, and wildlife parks with his family, which sparked his passion for adventure. As an adult, he continued chasing new experiences wherever he could. When Peregrine was 23, his girlfriend ended their relationship after growing tired of his constant traveling. Unable to move on, he became obsessed with winning her back. He believed that if he visited enough incredible places and built a successful travel channel, she would eventually regret leaving him. He started sharing videos online so other people could enjoy the places with him. Soon, thousands of people followed him because he was friendly, funny, and always showed the good and bad parts of every journey. He streamed almost every trip live so people could experience it with him. This was his 15th trip in 5 years since becoming a full-time content creator. Instead of choosing the destination himself, he asked his followers to vote on where he should travel next. The winning location was Kenya. Peregrine called it the kind of trip that would finally prove to his ex what she had walked away from. He packed his camera, phone, and backpack before heading into the reserve with a local guide earlier that morning. The guide warned everyone never to enter rivers, because crocodiles could remain hidden underwater for a very long time. Warning signs everywhere told visitors to stay away from the water. Peregrine nodded, but deep inside he believed he understood rivers better than most people. Heartbreak can make people do irrational things, and obsession can convince them every reckless decision is worth it. I feel like Peregrine wasn't just chasing adventure, he was chasing his ex's approval. After years of traveling, Peregrine had crossed countless rivers without incident. Over time, he convinced himself that if the water looked calm, it was probably safe enough. That belief had never failed him before, but this was not an ordinary river. Later that afternoon, he started another live stream, and this made him lose track and wander off the guide's trail. Thousands of people were watching as he walked toward the riverbank. Some viewers typed messages telling him to stay away because of the warning sign. Then Peregrine smiled into the camera and said he could cross before anything noticed him. He stepped into the shallow water and slowly walked forward. The river stayed quiet. He looked back at the camera and laughed. Then he took another step. Without warning, the water burst open. A huge crocodile shot out from below the surface and grabbed his leg with incredible force. Peregrine screamed as the camera fell into the water. The live stream showed splashing, muddy water and terrified shouting before the picture suddenly went dark. Viewers were watching when he died, and they couldn't look away, and they couldn't save him. That's the cost of performing your own death for an audience. Everyone has to carry it with them. Viewers immediately called emergency services and park officials after realizing the attack was real. Rangers and rescue teams searched the river for hours before recovering Peregrine's body later that day. His final live stream ended with thousands of viewers watching in shock, while the message he had hoped his ex would see was never answered. Park officials once again reminded visitors that warning signs exist because crocodiles can remain hidden beneath calm water and attack without warning. Some people chase adventure, others chase validation. For one man, the two became impossible to separate. It was Friday, April 10th, 2015, and the afternoon was warm in Nottingham, England. A basketball arena was getting ready for the evening game, but practice took over. Casimir Froud was 33 years old and worked as a storekeeper at a sports shop during the week. On match days, he became the team's mascot, and that was the job he truly loved. Years earlier, he had dreamed of becoming a professional basketball player, but after failing the final trials for a local semi-professional team, he refused to let that dream go. A while later, the club offered him a job as the mascot. He accepted immediately because it still allowed him to be part of the game he loved. Months before, Casimir tried a backflip before a slam dunk during halftime. He landed the move but sprained his ankle in the process. Even though he was in pain, he finished the performance before quietly going to the medical room. Doctors told him to rest for several weeks. While recovering, he watched videos of professional stunt performers online. After recovering, Casimir became determined to prove he could still perform difficult stunts. By the time he returned, he had already planned a new stunt nobody at the arena had ever seen. The team was preparing for another home game that Friday. During the afternoon rehearsal, Casimir told a few staff members he wanted to surprise everyone with a dramatic dunk. Staff reminded him to wait until the official rehearsal. Casimir insisted he was only checking the timing and distance. When they walked away to continue their work, he decided to try the stunt alone. There's nothing wrong with holding on to a dream, but it becomes dangerous when proving yourself matters more than recognizing your limits. To practice, Casimir found a small mobile work platform that maintenance workers had used earlier in the day to reach equipment above the court. It was designed for maintenance work, not for performing stunts, and nobody had given him permission to use it. He was already wearing the full mascot costume because he wanted to know exactly how the stunt would feel. He climbed onto the platform and stood near the top while trying to judge whether he could safely reach the basket during the planned stunt. Because the mascot head restricted his vision, he could not accurately judge the distance to the rim. He grabbed a basketball and leaned forward, while holding it in one hand. The smooth wooden court and the platform's unlocked wheels made it unstable. As he stretched toward the basket, the platform rolled backward across the floor. Instead of climbing down, Casimir believed he could still finish the movement. The platform suddenly shifted farther than he expected. He reached for the rim, but the bulky mascot gloves slipped away. Casimir fell awkwardly, striking his head and upper body on the hard wooden court. The oversized mascot head shifted during the fall, and everyone nearby rushed toward him. Arena staff immediately called emergency services, while trainers began first aid. Paramedics arrived within minutes and found Casimir unconscious with severe head and neck injuries. He was taken to the hospital, where doctors performed emergency treatment. They discovered serious head trauma and spinal injuries, and despite intensive medical care, the damage was too severe. Casimir died the following morning with his parents by his bedside. Investigators concluded that the accident resulted from an unauthorized stunt using equipment that was never designed for performances. The platform's unsecured wheels, the lack of supervision, and the mascot costume restricting Casimir's vision and balance. Casimir spent his entire adult life trying to prove that failing the trials didn't define him, that he was still the athlete he dreamed of being, and maybe he was. And I think that was what ended him.